Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, State Farm, and Autotempest.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 177. I'm John Davis, and joining me today at MotorWeek World Headquarters is writer-producer Brian Robinson.
Hello there, John.
Road test producer Ben Davis.
Here I am.
Assistant road test producer Greg Carlos.
Hey.
And Garick Zikan, our writer-researcher.
Thank you for having me again.
I got
much.
demoted.
We've got a lightning round, viewer questions. We're struggling here to see if we have something to complain about in our rant and raves. But first, let's run down some of the vehicles that we've had on our lot lately. Let's start with the 2018 Mercedes-Benz AMG GT R. My goodness, 4-liter twin-turbo V8, 577 horsepower, 0 to 63.6 seconds. What else is there to say? Brian?
It was super fast on track. It's like the whole front mid-engine thing where you're almost sitting close to the rear wheels, and there's a huge amount of hood in front of you. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to, having the front wheels that far away from you. But after a couple laps, man, that thing, it's super flat, lots of grip, sounded great. It was a fun car.
So what does the R really get you over the standard GT, if there is such an animal?
Just a few more horsepower, all new suspension, and some
is it
aero
more track
stuff.
tuned? I mean, that we had it at Roebling, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And adjustable traction control.
It has that yellow knob up on the dash where you can pretty much – there's a few other cars that do the same thing. This actually has a knob, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can dial in just enough traction control for your skill level.
how do you differentiate that car from – there's a lot of cars that cost $150,000 to $200,000, supercars, entry-level supercars, whatever you want to call it. What makes that car special besides the AMG lineage? If you had to describe it or compare it to other things in that price class, what would you say?
I think styling, honestly, is one of the big points about it. I mean, it has that classic – even though it's not an SL anymore, long
short hood,
which I think appeals to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of different for a car that's so performance heavy, where you seem like they're getting shorter and wider and maybe a little bit more compact. This one keeps that super long hood. So I think that it has that going for it.
It's definitely unique in that aspect. That's a tricky question, though.
It's a spectacular-looking automobile, but it also is heavy. I mean, you felt like you were driving a lot of German steel. So, with so many of the supercars basically pushing how light they are because of carbon fiber and magnesium and so forth and so on, it almost felt like a throwback, which I think makes maybe it's styling that befits it. And yet, when you went fast in it, you went very, very fast. So, I think it kind of stands apart from a lot of the other so-called rivals, at least on that level of money.
That V8 sounds fantastic, too.
Yeah.
And it had I don't know if it's like a full titanium exhaust system or whatever, too, but you could hear that thing going the whole way around the track. It was beastly.
That was the
Beastly is a
Beastly.
very good word.
Maybe a little old worldly.
Yeah.
It had some bite to it, too. I remember not ever feeling quite settled in it. I got into it closer to the end of our track time, so the tires were a little bit worn. So I always felt like it was kind of pushing me through corners and stuff. So I was a little bit afraid to really get into it and test its power. So I would say that it's also maybe on the raw side of things compared to some other cars. Yeah, it definitely has that fear factor.
That's good.
At the same time, my tires were worn when I got into it, too, but it was, while intimidating, more confident. I was more confident in it quicker than I thought I would be, but by no means was I 9.9 or 9/10 going for it, which I hear from a lot of people that it's very rewarding when you do that.
Mercedes-Benz AMG GT R. Now let's switch to two horses of a very different color, although they are still German. Buick Regal Sportback and TourX, Opel-based vehicles. Let me set this up. The Regal has long been a name that we associate with sedans and coupes. for Buick, and now they have gone a different route since they're pretty much converting themselves into an SUV-style brand. It makes some sense that they've taken the Regal and brought in a 5-door hatchback model. That's the Sportback. But then they also did one further and kind of going after maybe a piece of the Subaru business with a wagon called the TourX with all-wheel drive standard. I think these vehicles got pretty mixed results here at work. I know I like them because of their looks, although they're big. Let's talk about them. Granted, it's probably not a huge market, but do you think it's a smart idea for Buick to try something different, or what?
Well, as far as the Sportback, it seems to be where we're going. More everything hatchback instead of sedan. Not everything, but a lot more hatchback. And most of them, like the Stinger and some others, they're almost making them look more like sedans,
like A7,
giving them a hatchback. So I'm not sure. I get all that, but
and that's what they did with this one too. Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't look like a hatchback.
Wagon's going to be a tough sell, but it seems that they're doing kind of what GM's doing, what they were doing with Saturn before they got rid of that, where they were just rebadging Opals. So I'm not sure how well it's going to work out.
Their sales last year were down just a tad, but they're now basically, if you look at their ads, they're pretty much nonstop tout their 3 SUVs. Although they are doing one thing that stands out for them, although it's not unusual around the car world, is there's no on the latest models, there's no longer Buick written out on the sheet metal anywhere. And I thought it was kind of interesting, and there was a couple of stories that happened this week about it. But start looking around, and you'll find most vehicles don't have the name spelled out anymore. It might be part of the emblem, right, but that's about it. So what they're doing there is probably not unusual. I liked both of them. I thought for a 2-liter engine, I thought they had good response. They were comfortable. Actually, the seats were sportier than I would have expected in something called a Buick. I like the TourX because we're a wagon family with an Outback, but it's big. I mean, it's like I don't think it would fit in my garage.
It's good looking too. It has really nice lines. It's just going to be we've
just
alluded to it.
It's
a tough sell, and as good as it looks, people still see wagon, and when they hear wagon, they think, well, I'd rather have an SUV, or that's dorky. At least in America,
or they already own a Subaru.
That's why they call it a TourX, which everyone knows X means crossover.
Yeah,
all-wheel drive is standard. So they tried to make it a pseudo Outback-ish SUV.
Mm-hmm.
So you went on the event, right, for that one?
Just for the Sportback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously trying to get younger buyers, right? I mean, are they going for urban, because the big thing now is with the small SUVs is the specific person they have in mind, the demographic, is a young urban couple or single who likes to get out of town on the weekend. So they need all-wheel drive. They need a little bit of space. So it seems like this kind of falls in that category of that demographic.
It could be just somebody. I mean, there's always been a small but reasonable market for Mercedes wagons, occasionally a BMW wagon, Audi wagon. So, it's not big.
But this is a Buick wagon.
It's a Buick wagon. But here's a brand that used to be known for its wagons. But then those people are dead.
You mentioned Outback. I mean, we always talk about how nobody buys wagons, but I mean, they sell a ton of Outbacks.
They sell a lot of Outbacks.
So,
they just call it something other than a wagon.
Yeah, for sure.
Good luck, Buick. Jaguar E-Pace. Garick, smaller F-Pace. What is it?
Yes. It is smaller, F-Pace. It is about 13 inches shorter.
So it's their compact.
It is. It is their compact. And it's actually 11 inches shorter than the upcoming I-Pace. Mm-hmm. A lot of fun to drive. We were in Corsica to drive it. So,
too bad.
I know. It was a tough assignment. But the road had a lot of twists and turns, and we were going up and down mountains. And it has a 2-liter inline-4 turbocharged Ingenium gas engine, 296 horses. It handled itself really well. It really did. I'm always interested when we go on these events and we're going up mountains that the car companies must be pretty confident about the vehicle. And in this case, it certainly lived up to the confidence that they have. It's a ZF 9-speed automatic transmission, which was quick and smooth. It always seemed to know what to do and when to do it. I enjoy driving it. It has a normal mode and what they call dynamic mode, which other car companies call sport mode. Normal mode, I thought it was sporty and comfortable. I did try the dynamic mode, and it does everything that we know that cars do when they're in sport mode. Either way, I think for a small crossover SUV, it's going to be a little more sportier than probably a lot of people would expect.
What does it share its chassis with?
The Land Rover Evoque and the
Range Rover Evoque.
I'm sorry, Range Rover Evoque and Land Rover Discovery Sport.
So where the F-Pace, I guess the point I was getting at is even though the F-Pace also shares its chassis, when you look at the E-Pace, was there any indication to you that this was a family, that this had sprung from another vehicle? Because in the F-Pace actually came first. Before LR got a comparable vehicle.
Right.
This the other way around. But is there anything there that said, hey, this is a knockoff or anything else?
No. I'd say it stands alone. It's about an inch longer than the Evoque.
Looks like you can see out of it better.
Sure, exactly. And about 7 inches shorter than the Discovery. So the proportions are different. Part of our drive was we did go on a dirt road with pretty deep ruts. So it can do that. It's still stiffer than your Land Rovers, but it has the articulation to kind of handle itself in that situation. So I would say that would be the only connection to the Land Rover.
Well, we've already seen the new Evoque, right?
Right.
So technically this did come out before that because I don't think that's yeah. I'm sure this is on the new Evoque chassis. Not
I'm
the
sure you're right.
Old one, so
Yeah.
technically this one is coming before.
The looking at it, it's certainly an attractive vehicle. It looks like they obviously had to squish it a little bit to give the proportions they need for practicality. But very very nice vehicle. Anybody got anything else want to add?
$38,000 starting price is actually kind of attractive for a Jaguar.
Jaguar.
Yeah, is it? Are they done with diesels? Are they? I'm not sure. I'm not up on them.
This one will actually. There's a diesel version, but we will not get it.
Right.
You have to go to Europe for that.
And the F-Pace, when that came here, I'm not sure if it still does, but that was the base engine. I'm pretty sure it was a diesel.
Except it was delayed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they still are importing them or not. I know the ones they did import, some people had some problems with them. So
They still had some over at the dealership not too long ago. I was over there. So.
yeah.
There you go.
It with the plight of diesels in this country, it's still, I think there's still some life left certainly in trucks and maybe a few in SUVs. Although when things like the E-Pace or the I-Pace come out, all electric, maybe not. And we'll get on to the I-Pace in a little bit. Okay, which happens right now. Our lightning round.
It's been a little bit.
We've everybody's going to get a little bit of time around the table, about 30 seconds. It says for talk about a trending topic. How come we dropped that from 60 seconds to 30 seconds?
Because I ramble too much.
All right, Jaguar
You can
has
have my 30.
announced. When you hear that, Vel, the next time we'll shut up. Jaguar has announced specs for their small crossover all-electric I-Pace. With dual motor, all-wheel drive, 0 to 64.5 seconds, 240-mile range to start, base price $69,500. What's the impact going to be on the luxury market? Is this a legitimate Tesla competitor? And by the way, the Tesla Model X, which is larger, starts at $79,500. Significant because it's all electric and it came. It's before the Germans get theirs out. Both all BMW, Mercedes, and Audi are all working on them too.
That's the impact it'll have. It'll open the floodgates.
Yeah. What do you think about? We're not always. We're sort of skeptics about the widespread adoption of all electric vehicles. Timing for the Jag, good, bad? Is it going to make any difference? Is it going to give Tesla any problems? What do you think? Don't everybody just jump in first.
Well, we got to go one at a time, according to Joe.
Go ahead, Robinson.
All right. Well, I will say that, first of all, anytime anyone makes an electric car, we have to say, is it a Tesla competitor? Why can't everyone just make cars? Why does everyone have to compare everything to Tesla? Anyway,
Everyone has to compare something to everything.
But anyway, I don't think it's going to be a competition to Tesla because the Tesla, as you mentioned, is much bigger. This one's much smaller. As far as impact in the luxury market, I'd say it would be minimal. People aren't really lining up to buy luxury electric vehicles at the moment, other than Tesla. So there we go.
Any other thoughts?
That's interesting. I was going to say that my thoughts would be that it would open up the floodgates on other competition rolling out electric.
I think actually you're right
vehicles.
about that.
But I don't know. Maybe second guess myself. But I still think they're going to be out there, whether or not anybody buys them. I think you'll have plenty to choose from.
We have one coming from. We have a SUV from Porsche. There's one from Mercedes. I mean, everybody's got them coming. So Volkswagen.
I'm rooting for it. I think that there needs to be, and there will be. It's just now Jaguar's kind of just hit it at the right time. That there's going to be competition in that segment. Because Tesla's really all you have, and if you really don't look a lot into it, you think that's like the upper echelon of cars, but it certainly has its drawbacks. I mean, we drove it. The build quality is not great. Honestly, the Falcon Wing doors are cool in theory, but they don't always work that well. So I think now we got to get into the time of where you get electric SUV, and it's every bit as good as an internal combustion SUV, build quality and all.
I think the more people who would drive electric vehicles, whatever it is, the more they'd find out that they like it. So once you get past the range anxiety and the infrastructure, just the driving an electric vehicle, I think it's a different experience than quite what a lot of people think it is.
You know, you have to give Tesla credit for making electric vehicles aspirational, and it frankly caught all the other luxury brands flat-footed, and so now they're racing to catch up. They want to know that they've got something to offer their customers that's comparable. I think it's highly significant that Jaguar basically got there first, and they made a statement at Geneva which basically said that was their aim with this vehicle. And so we wish them luck. It was quite the star at the Geneva Motor Show. Even though everybody knew it was coming. Back
to people taking Tesla seriously. Didn't they actually outsell Mercedes and BMW in Europe with their S-Class? I think
might have.
I think the Model S actually outsold the S-Class in Europe.
Last summer I saw Model S's on the road, and the European roads tend to be smaller, a little narrower than ours, and it's a big vehicle. On
it is.
Okay, let's get on to our viewer question. We have Mike who sent in an email. And he says, Mike says, I have a 2017, John, read it properly, Kia Niro Limited. And, of course, we've been doing a long-term test on the Kia Niro Touring. He said he found that his MPG had fallen from the 40s to the mid-30s during the winter. He said, my driving habits have not changed. My tire pressure is correct. Did we have the same issue? What could it be? Any information we have? Well, Mike, I did look ours up. And during our last session with the Kia Niro, which was in the wintertime, and we noted it in our long-term test, our mileage did drop into the high 30s. It went from 48.1 miles per gallon average in the fall to around 38.7 in the early winter. And definitely with electric vehicles, you tend to have a situation where the batteries don't act quite as efficiently, and there's probably other things at work there as well. Brian, you want to jump in?
I drove it just the other day, and you noticeably drive with the gas engine more on because you got heat cranked and everything like that. There's hardly very little time you spend on all EV, so I'm sure that's part of it. He doesn't say where he lives. I mean, if he's living in Florida and this is happening, then
he's got a problem.
Yeah, but if he's in cold weather, I mean, I think that's the bulk of it.
I think people underestimate when you have that heat cranking and and you have heated seats on. I mean, that does eat up your battery power.
Yeah, you basically revert to engine running, more and more time. I will just say that it's been a really pleasant time having the Kia Niro, and I really didn't think I was going to like, just using it as a runabout all the time. But boy, what a pleasant little vehicle. So, but I think, Mike, that answers your question. It's probably the weather, and when things get warm up a bit, maybe you'll see your mileage hopefully return back into the 40s. Rants and raves, anything sticking in someone's craw these days about driving, other people's habits, your own driving?
Daylight savings time, man. It's killing me right now because I drive in going east on 70. So now when we finally got to the point where I was driving to work when the sun was up at a decent angle, now it's right back in my face.
In your face again.
So thanks a lot, Daylight Savings Time.
I heard that.
Is that it? That
was easy.
That was mild.
You need to, maybe we ought to get you some polarized sunglasses.
Or just leave a couple of minutes earlier.
All right, guys. I mean, let me just land here.
I'm happy it's daylight savings. I'm really happy. So I'm sorry you can't see
All
it.
right,
So
well,
it
I'll just
is
see
nice
myself
to
out.
get home
Yeah.
and the
And
sun
still have sunlight.
A bunch of
is
daylight
still
savings
up.
For an hour or
blowers.
It really
so.
is.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better. So
Thank you, Benjamin Franklin, for inventing that.
And that brings to a close, appropriately enough, our podcast number 177. I'd like to thank all of our panelists today, also our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, basically Brian Robinson, Ben Davis, Greg Carlos, Garick Zikan. It was a pleasure having you with us today. And Joe Ligo is back there manning our video for our video
Get on
podcast.
camera,
Thank you,
Joe.
Joe. We hope you'll catch MotorWeek on public television stations and on Velocity around the country every week. Our website, motorweek.org, now has a new way of finding out where the show is seen in your area. Just pull it down from the menu up top, and we hope we'll know that you're going to be on the other side of that camera watching us real soon. For everybody at MotorWeek, thanks for watching. I'm John Davis. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, State Farm, and Autotempest.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.